Good afternoon. It is 12 noon. It is the 15th day of December, the 15th day of Vlogmas. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the OG GM, still wearing the Bah Humbug hat, because why not? And it's time for some RPG news. Support me, water. So the number one story in relation to our hobby, Dungeons and Dragons role-playing in general, is the announcement that Chris Pine will be playing a role in the forthcoming Dungeons and Dragons movie. Now, if you're not sure which of the Hollywood Chris's Chris Pine is, he played Captain Kirk in the 3 modern adaptations of the Star Trek films, and he played Steve Trevor in Wonder Woman and will be playing Steve Trevor again in Wonder Woman 1984. Because time travel? Because he died it? I don't know. Whatever. Time travel. So that is which of the Chris's Chris Pine is. This film is supposedly going to be scheduled to start filming next year. Obviously, COVID permitting. We don't know which role he's going to be playing. We do know that D&D is sort of reaching the apex and starting to decline in its popularity. I actually ran into somebody the other day who did not know where Dungeons & Dragons was, which a few months ago I thought would have been impossible. I thought by now, thanks to Critical Role and Stranger Things and Community and Stephen Colbert, everybody knew what Dungeons & Dragons is, at least generally. But nope, I ran into somebody who did it. So obviously that train is starting to... Anyways, this is coming from Paramount. We don't really know anything about it except that the people responsible for it are going to be Jonathan Goldstein, Michael Giglio, and Joe Manioli. Yes, D&D, Magic Mike, Joe Handsome Hunk Manioli is going to be script, whatever. Other than that, we don't know anything. But let's face it, the previous 3, the one main release Dungeons & Dragons film and the other 2 direct-to-video Dungeons & Dragons films did not do very well. So you've got that hanging onto it. In fact, some of the best Dungeons & Dragons films were not anything about D&D. They were just the schlocky fantasy films of the 80s and early 90s. You know, Sword and the Sorcerer, Hawk the Slayer, Kroll, Lady Hawk, Princess's Bride. Those are amazing, great D&D films. So Chris Pine, Captain Kirk, Steve Trevor playing, I don't know, I could see him playing a rogue, a ranger, maybe a paladin. But, I mean, you know, he played Captain Kirk, and that Captain Kirk was very, gung-ho, schwarmy kind of, hey, I'm highly charismatic. So maybe a highly charismatic rogue or a bard. I don't know. It really depends how they're going to do a Dungeons & Dragons script and a Dungeons & Dragons film, because adding that name to anything just sort of instantly has preconceived expectations. But Chris Pine has knocked it out of the park in the past in several of his roles. I mean, the Star Trek films weren't well received, but he did do a pretty good job. He was great at Steve Trevor. He's done some other fantasy-related stuff, so who knows? I think you can't go wrong with one of the Chris's. And it is time to sort of bring back the schlocky fantasy, schlocky sci-fi genre films of the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s. Maybe, I don't know, it's kind of time to stop mining the comic books and reboots and whatever and return to the classic days of films like, Ice Princesses and Day of the Triffids and Hawk the Slayer. I would love to see another Hawk the Slayer. I mean, that's one of the best D&D films. Sword of the Sorcerer. So many great D&D films came out of the 80s. And even recently, if you've seen the horrible conglomeration that is Iron Mask with Jackie Chan and Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's like 8 different films smashed together and edited to try and make one film, that is an excellent D&D film. It is a beautiful disaster, and I highly recommend if you want to see just a utterly strange, mind-bogglingly, I have no idea what the fuck's going on, D&D film, that one. So there you go. That is the big news coming out for our hobby end of the year. Chris Pine, Captain Kirk, Steve Trevor, on tap to play some role, perhaps the main role, in what's sure to be a star-studded Dungeons and Dragons film that will start production sometime next year, COVID permitting. Is Joe going to be in it? Joe Manioli? I mean, he should be in it. He sort of helped spearhead it to get to this point, so he should probably play a role. I don't know. What do you think about Chris Pine playing the role, possibly lead role, in the forthcoming Dungeons and Dragons film? And is there a market for a Dungeons and Dragons film? Is there a market for films? I mean, is anyone going to go to the theater in 2021? Comment down below and let me know what you think. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet, please take a moment to subscribe. It helps you know what's going on with the OGGM adventures and helps me know what direction you want the OGGM adventures to take in 2021. And if you're planning on unsubscribing, because I've insulted you in some way, let me know why, because I can't fix it if you don't tell me what's broken. I will talk to you Star Trekky Dungeons and Dragons losers later.